Hey guys, it's Miss Nelson, and today we're going to be doing notes over modeling benchmark percents. So, a benchmark fraction and their corresponding benchmark percents can be used when estimating part of a whole. Some of the common benchmark percents are 1%, 10%, 25%, 33 and a third percent, and their multiples. So their multiples are going to be, if I take those numbers and multiply them by 2, by 3, by 4, by 5, by whatever, the corresponding answer that we get are going to be the multiples of those benchmark fractions. So these guys right here are going to be your benchmark fractions. So anything that is a multiple of that, you should always be able to go back and be able to find the answer to. So if we look at our first example, oh, and it looks like my line's not staying with it, so that's cool. We'll just go ahead and we'll just erase that and get that out of there. All right. So it says about 27% of the population of Texas is younger than 18 years old. There are 200 people that live in a neighborhood. About how many of those people are younger than 18 years old? So it tells us that since we know that 25 is close to, 27, excuse the bell, 27 is close to 25%. So we are going to go to our benchmark percent of 25. Okay, and then we're going to label our bar diagram because this is all about breaking our benchmark fractions down into models. So I know that my whole amount is going to be 200, and I know that we said that our benchmark fraction is going to be 25%. So each one of these lines up on top is going to be 25%. So you notice I just write 25, 50, and then 75, and then obviously there's our whole amount, which is 100%. That's always the whole amount. So if we look, we're going to break this down into, I have 200 as my total, but I have 1, 2, 3, 4 sections that give me that total of 200. So I'm going to take 200 and I'm going to divide it by 4. You should know that 200 divided by 4 is going to give you 50. So each one of these blocks here is going to be 50. And I'm sorry my writing's kind of off. I'm having to play with the board of how we're going to be able to get the answers and everything done. So if each piece is 50, I'm going to look at this 25%, and this 25% corresponds to this 50 that is right here. So about 50 people in the neighborhood are younger than 18 years old. Okay? Okay, so in example 2, a different variation of our same benchmark fraction of 27%, we could round it to another benchmark fraction. Now remember, this is all estimating when we don't have our benchmark fractions. Excuse me, so you're not expected, you're allowed to go a couple of ways because you're going to get within a couple of percentage points of where you want to be. So again, we start with our 27% of 200, and we know that 27% in this case, we're going to push it close to 30% of the 200. And we know that 30% is a multiple of our benchmark fraction of 10%. So our benchmark fraction we are going to be modeling is going to be 10%. So as a fraction, we know that 10% is 10 over 100, which is simplified to 1 over 10. So when we draw this out, if we know that this is still our 100% up here, and our total is still 200, and my benchmark fraction is 10, each line on top is going to count and increase by 10%. So my second line shown that is blank is going to be 20%, and then 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, oh, that's a 0, sorry guys, and 90%. So we're going to do the same thing that we broke. If we count all these, there are 10 sections total in our graph. So we're going to take our line graph, we're going to take 200 and we're going to divide it by those 10 sections. And again, we're dividing it by 10 because our benchmark fraction was 10. 10 goes into 20 twice. 10 goes into a 0 times. So each chunk of this on the bottom of our number line to equal our 200 is going to be counted by 20s. So underneath 10, I'm going to do 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, 120, 140, 160, and 180. And sorry again, my writing's kind of rough because I'm having to write on my tablet this time instead of the board. So we're going to locate the part that is at 30%. So if I come here and circle that, 30% of 200, according to our graph, is 60. So 27% of 200 is going to be about 60. And again, we're not looking for the exact answer because our original percentages up here were not benchmark fractions. Okay, so let's look at our last example. Okay, so in example 3, this is just showing you a 10 by 10 grid. It tells you that a 10 by 10 grid is used to estimate part of a whole, and each column, each vertical column in that is 1/10. So this piece up here is 1/10. The one next to it is 1/10, and so on. And then each piece represents the benchmark percent of 10%. So we're going back to our 27% and 30. So shading 30% are 3 columns. So that means if I come over here and I shade in this column, and then my third column, okay? So all of that put together is 30%. Because if there's 10 in each row, 10 times 3 gets me my 30. If each column represents 1/10 of 200, okay, and we already know, if you need to do the math again, we know that 1/10 of 200, take your 200, put it over 1, times, and multiply it by 1/10. That's essentially just saying that you're going to do 200 divided by 10, which is another way, which is absolutely fine. And we know that our answer is 20. So 1/10 of each one of these columns is going to be worth 20 amount. So if we have 3 of them, if I have my 3 columns and each one is times 20, 3 times 20 is going to give me a total of 60 right here. So 27% of the 200 is again close to 60. So these are just 3 different representations that you can use. Make sure you guys are familiar with all of them. You're welcome to draw them anytime you need them to be able to help you. They're quick and easy to draw, but it's just a visual representation to help you break down to figure out what estimations or what whole percentages are of a number that you were given. All right, see you guys tomorrow.